The House Armed Services Committee will come to order. I welcome each of you to this joint hearing of the Readiness Subcommittee and the Seapower and Projection Forces Subcommittee on the posture of U.S. Transportation Command. Today, the subcommittee will hear from the Commander of Transportation Command and the Administrator of the Maritime Administration on how well the Department of Defense is postured to meet the heavy and sustained logistical demands of a major conflict. While Transcom has operational control of some Air Force and Navy-owned aircraft and ships for this mission, a major contingency will require the substantial assistance of the U.S. commercial air and shipping fleet. Further, Transcom must rely on the military departments to budget for critical organic assets such as ships, planes, and ports, and the commercial air and shipping industry to willingly participate in defense logistical programs. Transcom can influence but cannot direct Army, Navy, and Air Force budget decisions, nor commercial industry business decisions. We understand that there are some deficiencies in the complex system that must be addressed. Among these are the Air Force's aging tanker fleet and some near-obsolete vessels that are part of our surge sea lift fleet. Today, we welcome the witnesses' perspectives on these issues and any recommendations they may have. Before I introduce the witnesses, I turn to the distinguished ranking member of the Readiness Subcommittee, the gentlelady from Guam, Congresswoman Madeline Boydallo, for her opening statements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. General McDew, Mr. Busby, thank you for being here today. Gentlemen, as a resident of Guam, I am very familiar with the importance of a resilient logistics chain, and I do thank you for your efforts to bolster support to our military forces around the globe. These committees remain advocates to ensure that Transcom and MARAD are provided the resources they need to deliver full-spectrum global mobility solutions to geographic combatant commanders in both peace and war. While both agencies have been supporting ongoing military operations for decades, the conflicts have generally been permissive to air and sea sustainment. I understand that CENTCOM requirements have burdened the services, but I am concerned that we may be slow to react to potential high-end threats or inadequately planning for and programming the capabilities needed to sustain the joint force in a contestant environment. So that said, I look forward to hearing from you today about your priorities, areas of concern, and how the fiscal year 2019 budget request will address these issues and balance current force sustainment while bridging future capability gaps. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Boydallo. We now proceed to the distinguished chairman of the Seapower and Projection Forces Subcommittee, a great friend of the military of the United States, Congressman Rob Whitman of Virginia.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson, and I want to welcome General McDew and Admiral Busby and thank them for your time and effort that they have made on this extraordinarily important issue. And I also want to thank Chairman Wilson for offering to have this joint subcommittee hearing today. I believe there are a number of overlapping issues between our two subcommittees, and I look forward to working with the gentleman from South Carolina to move these issues through the NDAA process. Gentlemen, I think the Department of Defense needs to reassess its commitment to a core military competency, logistics. At the heart of any successful campaign is a logistics train that provides the bullets and butter to the combatant forces in a timely manner. While high-profile acquisition programs are prioritized, little-known capabilities are left to continue their operations with little funding. It is obvious to me that we need to turn our attention to airlift and sea lift elements of our military strategy and take immediate steps to improve our logistics capabilities. Today, we have a surge sea lift force that averages 42 years old. Certain officials have referred to this sea lift force as the last bastion of steam-powered technology in the world. In fact, by 2020, Transcom will own almost all of the steam plant ships in the world. This is not a moniker that I relish, but it is a good example of the plight of our sea lift forces. While MARAD has done an extraordinary job of maintaining and activating select Ready Reserve Force ships, the reality of a full activation of this aged fleet is at best circumspect. I'm equally perplexed that this military has not to date presumed attrition in their auxiliary force requirements. It is pretty obvious that we have overly optimized our forces for peace. As envisioned by the National Defense Strategy, it's time that we shift our focus to get ready for a future of a potential conflict. I look forward to General McDew's assessment as to the impacts of the National Defense Strategy on the mobility forces. After meeting with General McDew last week, it is my understanding that an updated report on auxiliary forces to include attrition will be completed by the fall. As to our strategic airlift capabilities, today we depend on a much smaller fleet to move cargo, personnel, to medvac the wounded, and to support disaster relief around the globe. For example, of the last hurricane efforts with Hurricane Maria and Irma left us with an insufficient strategic airlift capability available to move troops and cargo to Afghanistan in a timely manner, threatening the ability of the Department of Defense's ability to blunt Taliban territorial gains. So when we get spread thin, the ability for us to do all the jobs gets stretched to the breaking point. I'm concerned that outdated planning assumptions need to be reviewed. I believe that assumptions made for an ongoing mobility, capability, and requirements must take into account the logistical needs of a future dispersed battlefield. Furthermore, the administration has made it clear that it wants to increase Army and Marine Corps force structure that will drive even greater mobility requirements. Additionally, areas are becoming less permissive for civilian aviation operations to deliver these additional soldiers and Marines to their areas of operation, increasing demands on an already insufficient fleet of strategic lift aircraft. Consequently, I believe it's critical for Transcom to thoroughly consider how to best increase strategic airlift capacity and its ability to operate in contested environments around the globe. At the conclusion of World War II, Fleet Admiral Ernest King reflected on our success and our shortcomings. He indicated, "The war has been variously termed a war of production and a war of machines. Whatever else it is, so far as the United States is concerned, it is a war of logistics." It is time that we reflect on Admiral King's assessment, an assessment that was paid for with the blood and sweat of the greatest generation. Today, we need to ensure that our logistics capability will provide the lift required in a timely manner to support our military objectives. I thank Chairman Wilson for working with the Seapower and Projection Forces Subcommittee on this important issue, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Congressman Chairman Rob Whitman. I'm grateful today to recognize our dedicated witnesses. We have extraordinary people who are with us today, and we appreciate you taking time to be here. We have General Darren McDew, Commander, U.S. Transportation Command, and Rear Admiral Retired Mark Busby, the Administrator of the Maritime Administration. As we begin, we want to remind the witnesses that your full written statements will be submitted to the record and that you summarize your comments to 5 minutes or less. And General McDew, we're grateful to begin with you and look forward to your opening statement.
I forget that every time. Thank you and good morning, Chairman Wilson and Whitman, ranking members Bordallo and Courtney, and distinguished members of the subcommittees. Thank you for this opportunity. As I've told some of you during office calls, I don't look forward to testimonies. I'm an introvert. It is not one of my favorite things to do, but it is also what I've told my staff, one of the most important things I do every year. So thank you very much for the opportunity. It's also an honor to be sitting here next to a great shipmate and a talented leader, Admiral Busby. I rely on his sage advice to ensure that the U.S. maritime industry remains postured and prepared to support our national defense. So thank you for the opportunity to represent the men and women of United States Transportation Command who are actually watching this morning because they want to make sure that I don't get this wrong. Those men and women who make up this command underwrite, and I say it again, underwrite the Joint Forces lethality with an unparalleled expeditionary capability. And just to say it shortly, I am very, very proud of them. U.S. Transcom's Total Force team works together every day to provide our nation with a broad range of strategic capabilities and options options that many nations don't have. But they don't do it alone. I wish every American understood how much we rely on the nation's truck drivers, conductors, commercial pilots, mariners, stevedores, and much more to meet national defense requirements. U.S. Transcom is a global warfighting command with functional responsibilities and expertise, and we take it proudly. We move and sustain the joint force, but we're also responsible for the expansive joint deployment and distribution enterprise. I can say with full confidence that today, U.S. Transcom stands ready to deliver on behalf of the nation's objectives, anywhere, at any time. However, as I said last year, I remain concerned about the future. As we refocus our efforts on great power competition, we're faced with adversaries who want to challenge our democratic values and undermine our security and the existing balance of power. In this environment, the logistics enterprise must always be ready. We must restore readiness and increase lethality across the joint force. The resources necessary to transport and sustain America's military must keep pace. Our ability to deploy a decisive force is foundational to the national defense strategy. The size and lethality of the force is of little consequence if we can't get it where it needs to go when we want it there. The 28 National Defense Authorization Act directed a mobility requirements study, and in fact, the current inventory of mobility assets is sufficient enough to support combatant commander requirements. This study will consider the current strategic context and use updated assumptions. Assumptions as multi-domain contested environments, attrition of mobility assets, and the outcomes of the study will provide valuable insight to ensure we are able to respond to tomorrow's needs as well. But U.S. Transcom can't get there alone. We need the weight of the nation with us and behind to ensure that our diplomats, when they go to the negotiating table, they are negotiating from a position of strength. However, one of the greatest threats to that strength is the result of illicit activities in the cyber domain. Today, our adversaries don't have to stop us with bombs and bullets. All they have to do is slow us down with ones and zeros. That's the challenge, I would say, of our time. We have got to get smarter as an industry and as a nation, not only about how we protect ourselves, but how we protect each other. Cyber defense is more than just security. It's about, for me, mission assurance. It's not just a DoD issue, it's a national issue. From safeguarding our intellectual property to guaranteeing the integrity of our elections, we've all got to be together. We also face challenges in the physical domain. Current mix of active to reserve component resources in U.S. Transcom means that the command relies on the reserves and National Guards to fulfill our wartime requirements. For the past 3 decades, reserve component assets have been used to sustain day-to-day operational requirements, a function for which they weren't properly resourced or structured. Meeting the challenges of the future may require adjustments to mobilization authorities or force mix to ensure we have access to vital capacity currently resident in our reserve and guard. Our patient movement system also presents challenges. Although U.S. Transcom operates the most robust patient movement system in the world, we lack sufficient capacities to surge for large-scale conflict with mass casualties. The combination of insufficient personnel, equipment, infrastructure, and capacity for patient movement significantly decreases the likelihood we'll see the same high-level survival rates that we've all come accustomed. We continue to work with the services, the Joint Staff, and the National Health Enterprise to address these challenges. Finally, we're able to maintain our go-to-war capacity. We must ask ourselves as a nation, who are we and who do we want to be? The U.S. flagged fleet has steadily declined since World War II from a little over 1,200 ships to 81 remaining today. That degradation correlates to a decline in qualified merchant mariners. They are the backbone of our industry. We continue to lose this capacity. I'm concerned what it will mean for how we project our force in the future. Again, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to present the case. And as you said, the rest of my remarks will be for the record. Thank you.
And General McDew, thank you very much for your statement, and we appreciate your service so much for our country. We now proceed to Rear Admiral Busby. Please proceed with your opening statement. Thank you for being here.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Whitman, Ranking Members Courtney and Bordillo, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to this hearing to discuss MARAD's role in meeting DoD strategic sea lift requirements. Our nation relies on maritime sea lift capabilities to deploy and sustain military forces, respond to national emergencies, and provide humanitarian assistance at home and around the world. These assets include a core of government-owned vessels and a larger fleet of privately owned, commercially operated U.S. flag vessels, intermodal systems, and mariners who operate them. During a crisis, these vessels and mariners would transport 90% of the equipment and supplies used by our military around the world. The government-owned fleet of 61 strategic sealift vessels includes 15 ships operated by Military Sealift Command and 46 in the Maritime Administration's Ready Reserve Force, RRF. These ships constitute the core of our surge sealift fleet and deliver military equipment and supplies on short notice during major contingencies. The average age of this fleet is 43 years, well beyond the design service life of these ships. Given the age of the fleet, the readiness of the RRF is a constant challenge. MARAD is collaborating with our DoD partners to address maintenance, repair, and modernization of the existing fleet while we finalize a long-term recapitalization strategy. The RRF is a component of the National Defense Reserve Fleet, or the NDRF. The NDRF includes vessels used to train merchant mariners and to provide response to natural disasters. These ships supported relief activities following Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, and have in past crises, supplying citizens and first responders with housing, meals, logistical support, and relief supplies. In their training role, these 6 NDRF vessels serve as school ships for more than 3/4 of the entry-level merchant marine officers who graduate annually from the 6 state maritime academies. Like RRF vessels, several of these school ships are at the end of their service lives. To ensure the availability of safe and efficient vessels to meet mariner training needs, the administration is amending the President's budget to request to include $300 million to replace 2 of these oldest training vessels. The U.S. flag commercial fleet is absolutely critical to the U.S. military's sealift objectives, providing long-term sustainment during military deployments. Access to this fleet comes primarily through the Maritime Security Program, the MSP, which supports a privately owned U.S. flag and U.S. crewed fleet of 60 militarily useful commercial ships operating in international trade that are available to transport government supplies when called upon. Critically, the MSP helps to ensure the availability of an adequate pool of highly trained mariners to crew our government-owned RRF fleet. Unfortunately, the U.S. flag commercial ocean-going fleet is in serious decline, with just 81 vessels in deep-sea international trade. Qualified U.S. mariners are needed to operate the surge fleet of 61 government-owned cargo ships in a crisis. Yet because of the drastic reduction in the size of the U.S. flag ocean-going fleet, the number of qualified mariners now available to crew a prolonged sealift mobilization is at a historic low. MARAD recently assessed the size of this pool needed to support the U.S. flag fleet in a major contingency and estimated a shortfall of 1,800 mariners for a long-term sealift effort. As Maritime Administrator, I take seriously my charge to ensure that we have enough U.S. flag ships and mariners to serve our nation's commercial and military sealift requirements. I'm working closely with U.S. Transcom, the Military Sealift Command, and the U.S. Coast Guard and the Commercial Maritime Ministry to address these issues. Access to cargo is critical for ship owners to compete globally while operating under the U.S. flag and employing U.S. mariners. Cargo preference laws keep U.S. flag operators competitive by requiring U.S. flag vessels to transport significant portions of cargoes purchased with federal funds. In addition, the Jones Act, U.S. build, ownership, and crew requirements support mariner jobs and give us access to domestic maritime assets needed in times of war or national emergency. It also serves national security priorities by supporting U.S. shipyards and repair facilities that produce and repair American-built ships. U.S. mariners on Jones Act vessels serve as another layer of national defense. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss these critical programs and the contribution that the U.S. Merchant Marine to to augment DoD's sea lift capabilities. I look forward to working with you to advance the maritime transportation interests of the United States, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
And Admiral Busby, thank you very much for your testimony. We'll now proceed for each subcommittee member to adhere to the 5-minute rule, and Tom Hawley is going to be beginning with me, the 5-minute, so that we may be having votes as early as 10 o'clock, so we want to be respectful of this for each member of the subcommittee. And Joe McDew, your testimony notes a legal restriction that hampers your ability to manage the air tanker fleet, namely a provision in the Defense Appropriations Act that prohibits Transcom from controlling tanker assets now assigned to PACOM and EUCOM, even if their operational priority is lower. Given the state of our tanker fleet, this restriction is a serious matter. That if you could highlight this consequence for the subcommittees.
Gladly, Mr. Chairman. My responsibilities as a global combatant commander, one of the things that I relish is the fact that I have authority to move assets around the globe. My responsibility to the chairman and the secretary is to set the globe for logistics and ensure that we're in balance. When we're out of balance, be able to shift those assets to the place and point of need. We can do that with every other asset except those that are restricted right now by law. And with those other assets, we can move from one theater to another, because if we could keep all the enemy combatants in one geographic commander's region and put a fence up around it, and they were able to fight just inside that geofencing, that would be nice. But today's world doesn't allow that.
Thank you very much. And for each of you, your testimony highlights the alarming decline of the U.S. flag commercial shipping fleet. And it is incredible, and I hope you go over that specifically. What can be done to maintain a healthy U.S. merchant marine and the commercial fleet?
Mr. Chairman, it comes down to cargo. We've heard it said many times, cargo is king. Without cargo, there's no need to have the ships, and without the ships, there's not the mariners. So to have cargo available for U.S. flag vessels to carry, that's the root of the problem. And whether we do that through cargo preference or through bilateral trade agreements or freeing up cargo that's available, that's the root of the problem.
And specifically, how many U.S. flag ships are there?
Right now in international deep sea trade, we have 81 U.S. flagships. And
this is a decline from?
Well, just as recently as 2012, we had 106.
So it's a very precipitous decline.
We've had a 27% decline just in 5 years.
That's stunning, and American people need to know that. Thank you.
Sir.
And General McDew, what is your assessment of the Air Force's progress in modernizing the air tanker fleet? Is the current plan reasonable, or can they move faster?
I would like to have a reasonable answer with this, Chairman, and that is what I look at is the overall capacity. Modernizing is important because the backbone of that fleet is 61-plus years old. When I flew them as a young lieutenant, they were old. They're considerably older today because I'm no longer a young lieutenant. So modernizing faster would be an answer, but the budget realities and the realities of bringing on a new weapon system are what they are. So we've got to continue to look at how we maintain them, how we fund that maintenance, because that is also a part of attrition as I see it. People talk about attrition as being kinetic and blowing things up or things falling out of the sky. Not adequate maintenance can cause us to have attrition in that fleet. So what I applaud the Air Force for doing is putting a program together that gets us to recapitalization. We've got to press that harder, but to maintain the capacity we have right now.
And I appreciate you raising that 51 years of age, some of the aircraft. The health and safety of our crews are a great concern. So however, we can be working with you. And General McDew, we understand that you're concerned about cyber vulnerabilities and your ability to communicate effectively with commercial partners in a time of conflict. What are you doing to address this risk?
Chairman, I want to applaud most of our industry partners for coming to the table with us regularly to involve themselves in our war games. I applaud the fact that they have accepted they've accepted all the things we put in our contracting language to bring up the level of cybersecurity standards. What we've got to get to is a better standard for them. but I like the fact that they're working with us to improve all of our ability to protect ourselves. I would ask that the nation take a deep look at itself and decide what we're going to do as a nation about a cybersecurity awareness and standard.
Well, it's ever-changing, and your input will be so important as we proceed to address these crucial issues. Thank you, and thank both of you for being here. We now proceed to Congressman Madeline Bordallo of Guam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General McDew, when you visited my office last week, you mentioned that Transcom is starting to prepare for logistics in a contested environment. Now, can you speak briefly to how Transcom models for attrition in varying threat environments? And then please expand on how Transcom is adjusting their priorities with funding and training to be prepared to support a conflict with peer adversaries in the Pacific region.
Congresswoman Bordallo, I'd love to, because I'll tell you, I am very proud of what the men and women of U.S. Transcom have done over the last couple of years in raising this level of attention to the idea of contested environment. Contested environment, we believe now, is woven into everything we think about. Unfortunately, we're still in our nascent place with this realization. And so our modeling is new. This mobility capability study that we've been directed to do in the last NDAA will now include attrition, contested environment concerns for the very first time after multiple capability studies. And we've got an analysis center that is a crown jewel of this country, actually, to be able to do that kind of modeling for any place on the world, to include the Pacific region.
Thank you. General, another question. The administration has discussed proposing a large increase in national infrastructure spending. Now, what would be your top priorities for infrastructure improvements as the Transcom commander in order to benefit our national defense needs?
Well, I like the fact that if I say out loud, infrastructure is part of national security. The national security strategy is a really good step, and it starts to get the American public to look at one thing. It is a national security strategy and not a Department of Defense security strategy. Our rail and roads infrastructure, our bridges, help us get from fort to port. That port then helps us get from port to port, and then the onward movement into the place of need. So all of that infrastructure is part of national security, trucking, rail, and our sea-going infrastructure. So it's very, very important to us.
Thank you. Please remember the Pacific. And my next question is for both of you. I understand that a large portion of our logistics rely on commercial partners, most of which operate on unclassified IT networks. So what steps are you each taking to first bolster your network security internally and with corporate partners, and secondly, ensure that your logistic chains remain resilient during network degradation?
Well, I'll speak quickly to the Department of Defense has a very strong program through U.S. Cyber Command to bolster and fortify the defense networks, the DoDIN. And so I'm relatively confident that we're doing a good job there, but we were learning every single day. My concern, because so much of it is outside and we rely heavily on our commercial partners, the lack of a national standard, the lack of national enforcement means that I need the nation's help to ensure that not just the defense industrial base, the people that make our widgets, but the people that we count on to move our goods and services around are as secure.
Ma'am, thank you for that. It's a very challenging program, as General McDew pointed out, because we deal primarily with commercial operators outside of the DoD network security, if you will. It is a huge challenge. Many of the companies who operate with us, as the General mentioned, are under contract. Part of their contract to operate with the government is to meet a certain security standard, and they've been very diligent about doing that. We have set up forums. The National Defense Transportation Association has a forum on the air side and on the sea lift side to talk about how we share information, so that if we see an attack on one particular carrier, that we can share that information and also figure out how to fight through and maintain the capacity to provide the service to the government. It's going to be an ongoing effort, but I think awareness is number one, and communication amongst ourselves is kind of key to kind of get where we have to go, but we have a long way to go.
Thank you very much. And one last point, General. Can you describe some of the challenges you have that the geographic commanders aren't faced with? And how do you balance mobility assets between theaters to ensure the DoD's readiness to respond to contingencies? And are there any barriers to this responsibility? I only have about 5 seconds left, so.
The geographic combatant commanders are awesome people, and they have a responsibility to fight a fight in their regions. My responsibility is across the entire globe. We're not a balanced force. We have more force structure towards the east than we do in the west and the Pacific. That means that we have to be able to take resources from one area and apply them where they're needed most, based on the priorities set by the President and the Secretary of Defense. So that's a bigger responsibility that I have.
Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Ranking Member Madeline Badayo, who we always appreciate, points out the strategic location of the patriotic territory of Guam. It's in the Pacific.
That's right.
So thank you. And we're grateful now for the chairman of the Seapower and Projections Forces Subcommittee, Rob Whitman of Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we begin, General McDew, I'll just get you, if you would, to place the microphone a little more directly in front of you. That'll be a help. So fantastic. Listen, I wanted to get General McDew, your perspective, and also Admiral Busby, as far as how we think in a more current framework about sea lift. And I want to turn to some directions in your testimony that you point to. And you said the dwindling size of the domestic U.S. intercoastal shipping fleet demands that we reassess our approach to ensure that the U.S. retains critical national security surge sea lift capabilities. We also may need to rethink policies of the past in order to face an increasingly competitive future. I wanted to get you to drill down a little bit on that. Those are interesting concepts about what we do to reassess our approach, to rethink our policies. I wanted to get your perspective, and Admiral Busby, your perspective on what would that rethinking and reassessing be, and what would you suggest to us where the redirection needs to take place in order to get the right policy for you to pursue this modernizing approach?
Well, I like the fact that I'm going to have Admiral Busby here to really call a friend on this one, because he's a much smarter human. I will take it from the perspective of a warfighting combatant command and the fact that we have a power projection responsibility. But if I step back even greater and I say, the nation, I still believe, is a maritime nation. Mm-hmm. But finding the evidence in our laws and policies and what we do to convict us in a court of law might become difficult if you start to look. And some of the programs we have out there that had well intentions in the beginning ought to be reviewed to say if we are applying all the things that we can apply, using all the rheostats that we can to actually make the implementation work. We've got rules that say you must use the Defense Transportation System. Applying it and making sure that it's actually being enforced is important as well. Yeah. Some of that will get to some of the cargo problems that we're facing. Admiral.
Yeah, great question, sir. Thank you. I think some of the things that really kind of have to fall in place probably going forth is, again, cargo. That's key. I kind of keep harping back on that because it is so fundamental. Sure. We have to be able to carry more of it. But the capacity of our nation to produce vessels, to repair vessels, to maintain vessels, is also really kind of fundamental to that security piece of it as well. Absent that, you know, we're not going to get very far should we get into a dust-up and we have to start producing vessels, large ocean-going vessels again. Our capacity is kind of limited to that. You know, there's ways that we can carry more of our domestic cargo right now, get it off the roads. Our maritime highway, our marine highway program is a great way to do that. You know, our waterways, we're blessed with wonderful inland waterways and coastal waterways that are by and large underutilized and could you know, carry a lot more freight with a program that you know, has more vessels on there and that could be militarily useful. So I think all those are things that we need to think harder about.
Very good. I appreciate that. Those are policies we need to be emphasizing, I believe. General McDew, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about airlift. As we know, the C-17 line is terminated. We have 25 C-5s that are now being sent out to the Aerospace Maintenance Regeneration Group out in Tucson, Arizona, better known as the Boneyard. We know where the demand is for airlift. We know that we could reconfigure those aircraft to modernize them. The Air Force has put a price tag on that of about $5.6 billion. I wanted to get your thought about where we are with airlift risk, and should Transcom consider increasing its airlift capacity by returning these aircraft to service. You talked about the need for military airlift, different from the CREF program, and operating in a contested environment. Give me your perspective about what we can do, because this seems like a faster way, rather than building new aircraft, especially since we don't have a hot production line for lift aircraft, to look at these C-5s.
Well, one of the things I'm very careful about in my role is not getting into too much of the lane of the service chiefs and service secretaries. Their responsibility, obviously, is to organize, train, equip, and provide those assets. And there's a lot of ways to skin this cat. And they've got top-line concerns, and the fact that a lack of a long-term regular budget on time is probably the biggest threat to any of that we face. You can't do much of the things that you suggest that might be answers without a budget on time year after year. So what I would say is we need to be able to look at all those things. But what we're doing, and the things we can control, is increasing the use of commercial where we can, making sure that we're more effective and efficient with the use of the gray tails, and making sure we're not overusing them when we can use other assets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And thank you, Chairman Whitman. We now proceed to the Seapower and Projection Forces Subcommittee Ranking Member, Congressman Joe Courtney of Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I apologize to you and the witnesses. I was at an Education Committee matter this morning and got here a little late. So I would ask, Mr. Chairman, if I could have my opening statement just entered for the record.
And it shall be accepted.
And I want to yield my time to Ms. Hanabusa or Mr. Brown, whoever was here before me on our side, because they were more punctual than I was.
Hey, you had important duties with the Education Committee, okay? So, and Councilman Hanabusa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Admiral Busby, I was kind of taken by the statements that you made. You said early on in your testimony that cargo is very important, and that's why we are seeing a reduction in basically what we have available. Then you also said that you need vessels that are militarily useful. So let me try and understand this. Cargo, for most part now, commercially, are transported like in container ships. I mean, the containers are stacked really high. Military useful, I suppose, because of your testimony as well, the two used ships that you plan to purchase are really roll-on, roll-offs.
Correct.
So the question I have is that when you talk about cargo and you talk about military useful, are we talking about the same types of commercial vessels that you need?
Primarily what we need, or what General McDew needs to move his force, are roll-on, roll-off ships, primarily. The force, our armed forces are primarily rolling stock, tanks, trucks, vehicles, that sort of thing, that move much more easily by having them roll up a ramp and into the belly of a ship, as opposed to being lifted onto the deck of a cargo ship, something like that. We still have need for container ships to move ammunition and other, bulk sort of supplies, but roll-on, roll-off ships are really the vessels of choice these days.
So, as I watch the different kinds of ships that are being built within the United States, I'm talking about Jones Act ships that qualify on all three criteria. They tend to look more like container ships than they do roll-on, roll-offs. Would you agree with me on that?
I would. Container ships and tankers primarily
Right.
have been the larger ships.
Have been the ships.
Right.
So almost by the needs of the general, you are basically saying that it is the MSP type vessel, which is one that doesn't have to be built in America. It just has to be arguably flagged, which may mean 50% plus of the board of directors plus maritime, but mariners are what we all want working anyway. That those ships tend to be or meet your criteria for General McDew. Am I correct?
As it stands today, yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Now, let me also ask you, we do know that you have a MSP stipend that you give ships for basically being available. And I think it's about, you said it's now 3.6 million. I think we're authorized up to 5 million or
Authorized up
something
to
like
5,
that.
yes, ma'am.
So how many ships are receiving stipends who may not be used? Do you have a number?
Well,
In other words, not called up, but they do receive stipend.
there are 60 ships enrolled in the MSP program today, which
Right.
is the authorized number.
Right.
And all 60 of those ships are receiving their stipend.
I understand that. I'm saying how many are actually called into service?
Right now, we have not called any into service. I mean, there are none currently called into service to do a sea lift mission. They are also in liner service in
Right.
their normal service, and they are carrying government cargoes.
So if I could ask that you provide for me through the committee chair a list in a year, the number of ships, or you can go 1 to 60, how many received the stipend, and how many were actually called into service, because that's what we're
Yeah,
paying
I
them
think we
for.
maybe call it into service may be the thing. They're all carrying government cargo. They're all carrying government
Military cargo. Military cargo, and for what length of time? In other words, what I want to know is whether we have a bunch of these ships that may receive a stipend, may be called up maybe one month or 1 week or something like that. That's what I'd like to know. I want to understand the scope of the demand that we have and how we're meeting that demand. And I'd also like to have, with the chairman's position, a breakdown as to where they are, because General McDew said something very interesting. He said the demand is in the east more than the west, and he defined Asia as the west. And for some reason, as our theater seems to focus to Asia, I'm very curious about that. And I'm out of time, so with the chairman's permission, if you can put it in writing and return it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield
Give
back.
that back to you, ma'am.
And thank you very much, Congresswoman Hanabusa. We now proceed to Congressman Duncan Hunter of California.
Thank you, Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Let's stay on the MSP, if you don't mind. We authorized $300 million. The administration only asked for $214 million. Let's start with that. Why is that? If it's so important, why would they underfund what we authorized and funded?
Mr. Hunter, I would start by saying the Department and MARAD greatly value and understand the importance of the Maritime Security Program. Absolutely. It's critical to our national security, it's critical to our sea lift mission. It came down to a very difficult budget season, and we had to make some very, very difficult choices, and that's where it ended up.
So the reason that it went to $5 million per ship is because they couldn't do it anymore at $3.5 million or $3 million a ship. Is that correct?
That's
You had ships and mariners dropping out of the program.
I don't know that that's the case.
That is the case. You had multiple ships drop out. You had some space there. We added the money, and then they were able to do it again. Do you have any estimates, either of you, any estimates on what it would cost if we didn't basically lease those ships to build that out organically and to maintain 60 ships that were able to do what the MSP ships do? Roughly, what do you think that would cost?
Between the ships and the networks, I don't know that I've ever seen a number. It'd be a very, very, very high number.
And the mariners, just guess, what do you think it would cost to build 60 ships, to have them on call for
About
us to use?
2,400 mariners that would not be available.
Say billions and billions and billions?
It would be a lot. Yes, sir.
A lot. And this is $300 million a year. I think that's a good lease on our security to have those ships available. Let's talk about Jones Act really quick. I would just like you to talk about it. Let me quote you, General McDew, what you said last year. Quote, without the Jones Act, without the Maritime Security Program, without cargo preference, our ability to project the force is in jeopardy. Is that still the case, or has that changed?
Without the rheostats that you provided in Congress, those rheostats, we would be in jeopardy because we would lose mariners and we would lose ships in international trade. It's still the case.
Can you talk about the Jones Act and what it means?
For
Jones Act, the Jones
industrial
Act-
base, for the mariners.
Yeah, for me, the Jones Act, from a warfighting perspective, is all about the mariners and the ability to keep mariners trained and ready to go to war. The ships that are in the Jones Act are also useful, but the primary thing we get from the Jones Act are the mariners. And those mariners have been with us in every conflict that I can imagine and suffered great loss and still stay with us.
Thank you. Admiral Busby?
Absolutely, sir. The Jones Act really is the linchpin. It's foundational to our merchant marine as it is today. It's not just it's the ships, it's the mariners, which are critical, and it's the infrastructure that supports the shipbuilding and ship repair part of the industry and all of the supply chain that impacts that, because that all has impact on our government shipbuilding programs as well. The costs of all of those and the availability of shipbuilders are greatly impacted by that as well. So it has far-ranging impact.
So two things. I think it'd be interesting to see a study, even a down and dirty one, on what it would cost to basically have a ready reserve fleet of MSP ships. What would that cost to have those 60 ships sitting around waiting to be used if they weren't doing commercial stuff or carrying government cargo too? I think it'd be interesting to look at how many shipyards you would lose and how many mariners you would lose in CONUS if you got rid of the Jones Act. The Jones Act is under constant fire, wrongly, but it'd be interesting to see how many small shipyards and medium shipyards, they might make intermodal ships and barges, but they still bend steel. They still have people that know how to build ships and power plants and that kind of thing. It'd be interesting to see what we would lose there, what that deficit would be if we said, fine, we're going to buy all South Korean ships or French ships or whatever. That'd be interesting. And even if you did it down and dirty, I think it would be great, not just for this committee, but I also chair the Maritime and Transportation Subcommittee on the Transportation Committee, right? Maritime Coast Guard. So those would be two interesting things where we could see the massive gap, the massive hole that would be left if you got rid of the Jones Act, if you underfunded the MSP and you had ships start falling out of that, what that would cost to make that up organically. But thank you both for your service, and thank you for being here. I yield back.
And thank you very much, Congressman Hunter, with your background. This is very helpful. We proceed now to Congressman Anthony Brown of Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General McDew and Admiral Busby, for your appearance here today. Let me start, General McDew, by informing you that we're doing just well at Joint Base Andrews, although we miss your leadership. I want to turn your attention to the Pacific Command and more specifically to the Korean Peninsula. I've had an opportunity to speak with a number of your peers, your colleagues, General Brooks. Last week, Admiral Harris, who was testifying before the committee. This afternoon, I'll be speaking with General Brown, and my focus has been on NEO, non-combatant evacuation operations. It's my understanding that General Brown has sort of the lead on coordinating, planning that effort, but no doubt Transcom is going to play an important role as you're bringing forces and material to the fight. I'm assuming, and I'd like to hear more about what role you'll play in supporting NEO. I have concerns about our level of planning and coordination, tabletop exercises, rehearsing. Can you tell me specifically what Transcom's role will be in NEO operations, what the level of readiness is, what our posture is, what challenges you are seeing right now in supporting PACOM's NEO operations?
The NEO operation on the Korean Peninsula would be a challenging undertaking, particularly if you get to several issues. One is how much indications or warnings there might be for a fight of that magnitude, the number of people that could be evacuated prior to hostilities starting, and you have different avenues off the island before that happens. Once a conflict erupts, those avenues start to diminish. If we were starting to project a force from the continental United States to help fight a fight on the Korean Peninsula, that might have to be interrupted to use those same assets to remove people from the peninsula if that were to come to pass. Step back even further. Our network of hospitals and things that we would use here in the continental United States to regenerate a force or to care for sick, ill, and injured is no longer what it was. So that network of hospitals we would use to come back through the CONUS has been impacted. We're working with national health organizations and others to see what we can do to challenge that current reality. If we had this happen during flu season, many of the beds that were taken up in our hospitals in the continental United States were flu victims. And we were starting to max out our ability to care for those people. So our network of hospitals, our ability to get warning and get people off the island without using our assets to not disrupt the flow of military goods and people to the island, all of that will be part of it. We're working with PACOM, who has the lead, and we're in support of them, and we're in part of their planning. And it continually changes every day depending on what assumptions you make based on what's going on.
In the last year, and with the rollout of the national security strategy and the national defense strategy, has Transcom heightened its attention, its focus on the Korean Peninsula and the support to the peninsula, or would you say it's the same today as it was 4 years ago?
I don't like to use for my command heightened. So what I like to try to tell everybody is we look at the entire globe every single day. We don't shift. We don't change necessarily. We may refine our focus a little bit on an area that is more volatile than another one, but we have to keep a broader look. If I get sucked into only one place on the globe, and we think that we have everything we need there, then I'm not able to be as flexible and agile bringing things from other parts of the globe for that effect. We've paid more attention because we go to more PACOM exercises, we go to more planning sessions with them, but I'm also thinking about the Middle East, I'm thinking about South America, I'm thinking about Homeland Defense, and all of it at the same time, but we have finitely focused.
Just one final follow-up. I mean, today, what is your single biggest concern or shortfall in terms of supporting a NEO operation in Korea if you were asked to do that today or tonight? We say we're ready to fight tonight, let's go to war tonight. What's your biggest concern or shortcoming?
How many people may be killed before we can get there? But I have a bigger concern than that. Before we start any fight anywhere in the world, we've got to deal with a contested environment and the fact that we'll have to fight our way to get to the fight. And we've not come to grips with that necessarily as a nation, that we don't own every domain anymore. 70 years of going without a fight has put us in a different place as a nation. That's as big a concern as any, even when you start talking about NEO and whether the American public is ready for the fact that we don't control everything that we once did.
And thank you, Congressman Brown. We now proceed to Congressman Austin Scott of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of issues I'd like to hit on. First and foremost, the men and women. Admiral Busby, you're a graduate of the Merchant Marine Academy. I, as a parent, looked at the various academies, and midshipmen at Kings Point are treated very differently than the men and women at any of our other federal service academies. At any of the others, they receive pay, although I think that our cadets would tell you the pay is not maybe exactly what, it's not exactly $900 by the time things are taken out of it, and they're covered under health insurance, where at Kings Point they're not. And I just wonder if maybe we could do more for the midshipmen at Kings Point, elevate the Merchant Marine Academy, quite honestly, to the status that I think it deserves. And any thoughts you might have on that?
Yeah, thank you for that, sir. And yes, I am a very proud graduate of Kings Point, and we are a bit different. We are not DOD, we're not DHS. Our students are civilians. They're not part of the military or government employees like they are at the other places. So that's why they don't get paid and why they don't fall under those other bits of coverage. We would have to basically fundamentally change the way that the school is organized in order to, bring them under some sort of more government umbrella to make them employees, if you will, which would be an option, but there'd be a big cost associated with that.
Sure, fair enough. You're just a graduate that has done a tremendous amount for the country, and interested in your thoughts on that, and hope that maybe as we look at how we get more merchant mariners in, that might be in the service, that might be an opportunity there with helping the midshipmen and others. Right. One of my biggest disappointments in the things that I've seen in the budget has been the proposal to retire either the Comfort or Mercy, one of our hospital ships. I was recently in Djibouti and noticed that the Chinese actually had a hospital ship in port over there and are delivering services. I think it is. I think that soft power is extremely important, and as respectfully as I know how to, want to criticize the decision to draw down that soft power. I would actually hope that we would be building more ships where we could deliver services to the citizens as they need it. So what do you propose doing to account for the loss of one of I believe our most powerful assets although it's soft power, how would Transcom provide services in the case of mass casualties? What are you going to do in contested environments in the case of hurricanes, where we have traditionally used one of these ships to provide services?
Congressman, as I try to be more thoughtful about my answers, and it's yours a very valid question, I have to go back to the budget. If we don't pass a budget on time and give the services a reasonable expectation to know when they're going to get a budget, to be able to plan for a budget, we were going to have more tough decisions that the services will have to make. The United States Navy, the CNO, is a really good friend of mine, John Richardson. He makes the best decisions he can with the resources he's given to deal with it. That won't be the last tough decision they'll have to make if we don't get our budget reality in order. I'm even more concerned that the decisions, we've got men and women who've served in our armed forces, senior leaders who've never seen a budget passed on time in their entire careers, or at least in their senior developmental lives. They're members of this body. Their entire tenure, they've never seen it done on time. And I can't go back until I have to go back to almost being a colonel. So those are things that are more, I think, even more important questions to ask. What will we do? We'll do the best we can. And I believe the full network and all the resources we can bring to bear to
General, I appreciate your service and appreciate your comments. We have an 18 number. We have a 19 number. I think that I understand. I think your comments are justified. But I would tell you that this is a 2020 decision. And while the Chinese are making a strategic shift to not just pay off the leadership of countries to provide services to the citizens of a country, for the U.S. to pull back on that soft power side, I think it's just I think it's a strategic mistake for us. Thank you for your service.
And thank you so much, Congressman Scott, for your heartfelt questions. We now proceed to Congressman Joe Courtney of Connecticut.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And again, thank you to both witnesses. Good to see General McDew here again. And congratulations to you, Admiral Busby, on your confirmation as the MARAD administrator. Admiral, this subcommittee, has really actually been pretty engaged on the question of the national security multi-mission vessel, which is to, recapitalize the Maritime Academy ships. We, in the last NDAA, authorized $50 million for that program, and we'll see what the appropriators finally produce in the next, hopefully, a couple days or so. And again, there have been prior authorizations that have sent that signal. Obviously, the administration has come over with something much different, and I guess the question I would ask is maybe just if you could sort of talk a little bit about how you see, that proposal and which again will deal with 2 academies. There's 4 others that are sort of built in the recapitalization program for, and just whether or not you see our plan or the congressional plan as sort of, where does that fit in terms of, again, particularly those 4 remaining academies?
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. The school ships are very high priority of ours. We fully recognize the criticality of them to the whole idea of mariner training, in particular those 2 old ships, the Empire State and the Kennedy, that absolutely need to be recapitalized now, which is why I think we seized upon the opportunity with the FY19 budget request to try and take care of 2 of them immediately, right away, with using used ships, what we would modify to serve as training assets. We'll have to see what comes out of 18. That may advise us a different direction to go in 19. But absent that, we have the design for the new ship, and that's a great place to go. That's, I think, an aspirational goal to get to. It's a very capable ship, and it actually will help advise us on the kinds of things that we would want to have in a ship that we would procure and modify if necessary in a U.S. yard.
Good. Well, thank you. I mean, as I said, this has been an issue of high interest on the committee, again, for the reasons that General McDew said. I mean, sure. At some point, we're talking really more about workforce than platforms in terms of this recapitalization program. And if, we just sort of let this go, it has a much bigger ripple effect in terms of the future, maritime sailors that the country needs. Admiral, we also talked the other day about a project that was started by your predecessor, Mr. Janikin, to sort of finally get an updated maritime strategy for this country, which, as he repeatedly reminded us, hasn't happened since 1936. Again, the general, mentioned in his comments about the fact that maybe we do need to sort of go back and look at, what's the barnacles that have built up over the years there. And but again, this is not an easy project because there are so many agencies that touch this issue. And I was just wondering again what your thoughts are about trying to complete that project, and whether or not you see any timeline that we can expect.
Yeah, well, that draft strategy was waiting for me in my inbox the first day I walked in to take over as administrator, and I actually participated in contributing to it prior to becoming the maritime administrator, and I think Administrator Janikin did a great job putting that together. It's my goal to get that across the finish line. We're working on it in my staff right now to update it, bringing it up to reality, the realism of today. And we're getting it chopped within MARAD right now, and we'll be getting it out to the industry to have a look at here very shortly. And goal is to get it out so we can all start rallying behind it. It's an important document.
Absolutely. Again, as the general said, we are a maritime country, and I think it's time to get sort of a clearer focus. Again, the seapower subcommittee, which I think at some point probably will have a role to play in terms of executing on some of that strategy. As I said, we're on standby, waiting for that process to be completed. Again, I want to thank you for, again, your commitment to finishing it.
Yes,
so with that, I yield back.
And thank you, Ranking Member Courtney. We now proceed to Congressman Trent Kelly of Mississippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank both of you flag officers, general officers, for being here today, and thank you for what you do. General McDew, I want to go back to Mr. Scott from Georgia's question, because I don't think that's an adequate answer. United States Navy hospital ship Comfort deployed to the Gulf Coast of Mississippi in 2005 to respond to Katrina. In 12 days, the medical crew there provided care and medical treatment that was sorely needed by the residents of my state and the emergency workers in Mississippi and Louisiana. Our hospital ships have served American citizens, foreign nations in times of emergency and national disasters forever. There's a national security requirement for 2 ships to respond to mass casualties from a potential forcible entry operations, and the Navy's planning on retiring one of them. If the requirement is 2, we have to have two, or either we have to be screaming loudly. And I don't think blaming it on the budget from the House, I've only been here 3 years, so I haven't been here as long as those guys. The House passed ours in September, we passed it again in November, and we passed it again for the defense part of that again in January. So we passed it 3 times through this House, and we've got to get the Senate. But that still doesn't excuse. When I was a district attorney and I lost a statement that I needed for a murder case, I couldn't say just dismiss the murder. I still had to try that murder case, and I had to find a way to win. We have an obligation to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and also the civilians across this world for you to scream loudly to the CNO or whoever that is that makes that decision to say we have a national requirement for 2. And so I really hope that you will take that back and say we have a requirement for 2, not just for wartime and forcible entry, but also for peacetime. And so I just really ask that you fight as hard as you can, even though they may have thrown out your best option of evidence. Please push hard to get us that second ship, because there will come a time when we need that, and we need to always be ready. And I think you're the guy who has to push that for us. We can't speak as loudly as you can, General McDew. So I hope you'll tell me you'll do that.
I will try my best, and I would like to apologize if any of my comments were seemed to be offensive about the budget. I speak loudly about the things I feel obligated to speak about in the defense of the nation. The budget happens to be one of them. Hospital ships, I'm a big fan of hospital ships because I love the fact that we can help injured and ill members. But I'll tell you, for every 1 hospital ship we're short, we have a requirement for 479 air refueling tankers.
I agree, and that's my next question.
We have a requirement
I'm there too, and I was actually ate dinner. I actually spent some time with Secretary Mattis last night, and I echoed your point about doing things on time. So I'm doing my part to fuss it whoever I need to get us there, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. But I also know that in hard times we just got to suck it up and get there. We got to figure out a way, because I've served 32 years in the military. I want to go back to C-17s and KC-135s. Mississippi has 2 great wings or squadrons. I'm not an Air Force guy. I'm an Army guy. You know, we talk about battalions and brigades, not wings and squadrons. But I will tell you, those guys have been the first to deploy and the first to get there timely every time this nation has had an incident. And our C-17, and I invite you to come down and visit those guys. And I know that you have before, but I want you to come see them again. But it concerns me that with the shrinking requirements, that we're shifting assets to not make those guys as ready. And let me just tell you, our pilots are as good or better than the guys on active duty because they get more hours because they also fly civilian. Our maintainers are better because they're more experienced, have been there longer, and continue to maintain. So I just ask, when you're looking at any kind of leveling or any of those requirements, General McDew, just make sure that you understand those guys are ready, and they can, do, have, will deploy on a moment's notice. And they were, we were strategic reserves when I was a kid, but the Guard and Reserve is no longer strategic. They're operational, and we have to plan for them to be that. And I know you're doing that, General McDew, so I just kind of want to give you a shout out and thank you, but also wanted you to respond to that a little.
I'm one of the biggest fans you'll ever find of the Guard and Reserve. I've flown with those units. I've actually trained with those units. The wing commander of one of your units was actually my stick partner when I went through C-17 initial qualification. I probably was the instructor for some of the guys in the 135. So I absolutely agree with you. But here's another thing I would throw back. We are using them as an operational reserve. We're not funding them, resourcing them to be an operational reserve. I know they will come to the sound of the gun when we ask them to. But what we're asking them to do every single day is getting harder and harder, and will they stay with us in what we might call peacetime at the pace we're using them? I believe they will, but I think I want to pay attention to how we're using them in peacetime.
Mm-hmm. I can speak for my Mississippians. We'll be there. We'll stand fast. We always have. And thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, General Kelly, for your questions. We now proceed to Congresswoman Susan Davis of California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, both of you, for being here today. I'm sorry I missed some of your earlier comments, but I wanted to get back to 2 issues that have been discussed by my colleagues. The first one dealing with the Ready Reserve Force, and in previous testimonies, we talked about allowing foreign constructed ships to be inducted into the Ready Reserve Force. This is very different than the personnel that we need to do that as well. But I didn't know what Transcom's plans recently have been discussed to recapitalize the Ready Reserve Force. What is the length of time that it would take to implement this plan?
So really, I believe the committee may have had some folks here yesterday or the last few days to talk about the Navy's plan to recapitalize that force. And right now, it's got to be a multi-pronged program because we can't buy our way out of this problem overnight. One of them is to service life extend several of the younger sets of ships as we can. The other will be to try to buy used. That avenue we have to have as a bridge to building new ships. The point we get to building new ships is, I think, 2028. So between now and 2028, I really don't want to be the largest owner of steamships in the world. You don't want me to be the largest owner of steamships in the world, so it's got to have that multi-pronged approach, and we need your authority.
Do you see that more with retrofitting, and would we be doing that domestically?
So the buy used or the building ships? The building ships would be a plan to build in U.S. yards. The service life extension would be work done in U.S. shipyards. The buy used could be a combination. We would be right now having to go out on American-built ships on the open market, which there are fewer of those because of the decline of international trade in the U.S. market over time.
And what about security concerns on foreign constructed ships?
The foreign constructed ship would need to be retrofitted and brought to U.S. standards in U.S. yards.
Okay, and I'm sure those concerns are being addressed.
And we have many of those ships that we were proposing to purchase used are sailing for us now in the MSP program.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And on the issue that we've just been discussing, and I'm delighted to hear my colleagues talking about needing to project soft power through the Mercy and Comfort. And having been on the Mercy when it's out in theater, I greatly understand and know how important that is. So I think we're looking at 2020, and obviously the decision has to be made far before that. Do you see us weighing in on that and trying to look at what we might do to think about a replacement? Is that in the cards? What are you thinking about? And the other thing, General, don't feel bad about the budget. That's exactly what you need to say, frankly, from my point of view, because we make a lot of decisions here, and they've got to be connected to these issues. And quite frankly, they're not. And so when we create large spending measures in the form of tax cuts and other things that we do, I mean, we need to be thinking about how that impacts this. And it's very appropriate for you to raise that issue. So I wanted to be supportive of you in doing that. So what are the plans for replacement, and how can we be thinking about this so that perhaps we make a very strong statement about the strategic implications of not having that kind of force available to us in the future?
I will defer the actual plans for replacement of the Comfort, those hospital ships, to our Navy. For that decision. That's got to be in their budget top line, and they have to get through that. And it's part of their overall recapitalization plan for ships and their shipbuilding strategy. My apology, by the way, was not because of what I said, was if it was intended, if it was took as offensive. That was my apology. I'm a Southern boy.
Sir,
so
I didn't take it offensively. Yeah. Thank you. So at this point, it's in the Navy's hands, and if we have an interest in weighing in on that, we should. I think what would be helpful, and again, this is, I'm sure the Navy's listening, that it's important to know, what is that worth to us? I mean, what is it worth it?
Well, I would offer that question on a number of things across our country. And in particular, I love the fact that you have us here today shining a light on some areas that don't get a light shined on them. Everybody likes to talk about our kinetic force, and we can build the greatest assets in the world, but there's a lot of things that are foundational to the Department of Defense and national security that go without this kind of attention.
Yes.
And I go back to our commercial industry. I'll go back to all those assets that are out there that make us the nation that we are.
Thank you.
And thank you, Congresswoman Davis. We now conclude with the best. Congressman Bradley Byrne of Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Busby, my uncle Jack Langsdale graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy and served during World War II.
Great. God bless him.
I came across a letter that he wrote to my grandmother Christmas Eve, 1942, telling her he's fine, but if you don't hear from me, that's good news. The next thing she heard, he was lost at sea with all hands on his ship. And we lost thousands of merchant mariners, during World War II. And I was thinking about that when I was looking at your written testimony, because I heard you say we're 1,800, got 1,800 gap on merchant mariners. But your written statement says the estimate assumed that all qualified mariners would voluntarily report when called upon. I think that probably would happen. And that there will be no ship losses or personnel casualties.
Right.
We know that's not likely to be the case.
That's correct.
So your 1,800 number dramatically underestimates what our need is. You heard Mr. Courtney's on the Education and Workforce Committee, Chairman Wilson's on the Education and Workforce Committee, Ms. Stefanik's on the Workforce Committee, I am too. What can we do to help?
Well, the biggest thing probably, it's going to be a matter of, that's a good question.
That's why I asked.
There's a lot of ways to come at it. The 1,800 people short, the way we have place for people to work today is more ships. And for more ships to be around, there has to be more cargo. It all kind of hangs together.
Right.
So it needs to start with that and then work up toward, with more cargo to carry, more opportunity, more ships then therefore to be around to carry it. Requiring a larger pool of mariners there to man those ships. So that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and sometimes we get lost at that here in Congress. We think that what's going on here is we're trying to prop up some private sector industry for its own sake. That private sector industry is critical to the national security issues regarding the United States
Absolutely.
of America.
It's what we depend upon.
And so we want to help you. You can help us by helping us put that case together. And you can state it better than we can. It's better for us to refer to you in what you've determined and what you think is important for the security of the country. And I would ask you to help us help you by giving that to us and give us a plan. What do you want us to do? Here in the Armed Services Committee, Education and Workforce Committee, what do we need to do so that we make sure that we have those personnel in place? Because there's a conflict out there in the future. And we're hearing in other hearings that our adversaries are developing very capable submarine fleets, just like the Germans did before World War II. And we've got to be very dry about this and understand what's out in front of us and what we've got to be prepared for. Because if we wait until the conflict happens, you know this better than I do, it's too late.
Right.
We got to do it now. So I would just ask you to help us help you by giving that to us, lay out the game plan for us. I told this to Secretary Spencer not too long ago. I'm like the offensive guard on the football team, coach calling the play. But you got to give us that play so we can know what we need to do to carry it out. And I just ask you to spend some time thinking about that. Let us know.
We'll be happy
With that,
to
Mr.
provide
Chairman, I yield back.
And thank you, Congressman Byrne, for your extraordinary family heritage. We thank the witnesses. We appreciate your service to the nation. And Tom Hawley has been excellent again, keeping us on track. We are adjourned.